The notification sound echoed through the empty computer lab as 17-year-old Alex Chen watched his entire digital world crumble in real time. His stolen phone, now in the hands of Ridge Valley High's most notorious bullies, was being used to systematically destroy every social media account he'd ever created. Instagram posts deleted, Snapchat streaks broken, Discord servers abandoned. But what Brad Hutchinson and his crew didn't know was that they'd just stolen the phone of someone who could turn their own digital lives into a living nightmare with nothing more than a laptop and an internet connection. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. By tomorrow morning, every embarrassing photo, every private message, every deleted browser history would be plastered across the school's digital landscape for everyone to see. They thought they were humiliating a quiet kid who couldn't fight back. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who lived and breathed in the digital realm where he was absolutely unstoppable. Alex Chen had perfected the art of digital invisibility long before he ever stepped foot in Ridge Valley High School. At 17, he possessed the unique ability to blend seamlessly into both the physical and virtual worlds, moving through hallways and online forums with equal ease while leaving barely a trace of his presence. His slender frame and understated appearance made him forgettable in person, but behind a screen, Alex was a different creature entirely. He could navigate the deepest corners of the internet, understand complex coding languages like native tongues, and manipulate digital systems with an intuitive understanding that bordered on supernatural. The move to Ridge Valley had been sudden, like most things in Alex's life. His mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, had accepted a research position at the local university, and his father, David Chen, had found work as a network security consultant for a nearby tech firm. The irony wasn't lost on Alex that his father spent his days protecting companies from the very type of digital intrusions that Alex could execute with frightening ease. It was David who had first introduced Alex to computers when he was barely 8 years old, teaching him basic programming as a way to keep his curious mind occupied during long summer days. What started as simple HTML websites had evolved into something far more sophisticated. By age 12, Alex was writing complex scripts and understanding network architectures that challenged college-level computer science students. By 15, he was quietly penetrating security systems just to see if he could, always careful to leave no trace and never to cause any actual damage. It was intellectual curiosity rather than malicious intent that drove him, a desire to understand how digital systems worked and where their vulnerabilities lay hidden. His parents knew about his exceptional abilities, though they worried constantly about the ethical implications. They had countless conversations about responsibility, about using his skills for good rather than personal gain or revenge. Alex had always listened respectfully, understanding their concerns and agreeing with their principles. He'd never used his abilities to harm anyone, never accessed systems he shouldn't, never violated anyone's privacy for personal gain. He was, by all accounts, a model digital citizen despite possessing skills that could cause tremendous harm in the wrong hands. Ridge Valley High School occupied a sprawling campus on the outskirts of town, its modern buildings and well-funded technology programs reflecting the affluent community it served. The school prided itself on being progressive, with every student issued a tablet, high-speed Wi-Fi throughout the campus, and computer labs equipped with the latest hardware and software. For most students, technology was simply a tool for communication, entertainment, and basic academic work. For Alex, it was like being given access to an enormous playground filled with interesting challenges and hidden pathways. His first week at Ridge Valley had been relatively peaceful. Alex had chosen his classes carefully, gravitating toward advanced computer science courses where he could work quietly without drawing attention to himself. He'd found the school's digital infrastructure fascinating, noting security vulnerabilities and outdated protocols with the casual interest of someone reading a particularly engaging novel. The student body seemed typical of any affluent suburban high school, with the usual mix of social groups, academic achievers, and those who seemed more interested in their social media presence than their education. Alex had established his routine quickly. He arrived early each morning, spending time in the computer lab before classes began. During lunch, he'd find quiet corners where he could work on personal coding projects or explore interesting corners of the internet. After school, he'd often stay late in the library, ostensibly doing homework but actually working on increasingly complex programming challenges he'd set for himself. It was a solitary existence, but one that suited him perfectly. The first signs of trouble had emerged during his second week. Alex was in the computer lab during lunch, working on a particularly challenging encryption algorithm, when he became aware of voices behind him. 3 students had entered the lab, their conversation loud enough to disturb the usual quiet atmosphere of the room. Alex glanced over his shoulder briefly, taking in their appearances with the same analytical approach he applied to everything else. The leader appeared to be a tall, muscular student with perfectly styled blonde hair and clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His 2 companions flanked him like bodyguards, one stocky with close-cropped dark hair, the other lean and nervous-looking with constantly darting eyes. They moved through the lab with the casual arrogance of people accustomed to having others get out of their way, and Alex made a mental note to avoid them in the future. Brad Hutchinson had been Ridge Valley High's unofficial king since sophomore year, when a growth spurt and natural charisma had elevated him from ordinary student to someone who commanded attention wherever he went. His father owned several successful businesses in town, his mother sat on the school board, and his older brother had been a star athlete before graduating to play college football. Brad possessed the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to question his place in the social hierarchy, and he'd surrounded himself with people who reinforced that position. His lieutenant was Mason Torres, a stocky wrestler whose loyalty to Brad was absolute and unquestioning. Mason came from a middle-class family and seemed to view his association with Brad as his ticket to social elevation. He was the type who would do anything to maintain his position in Brad's inner circle, no matter how questionable or cruel the request might be. The third member of their group was Ryan Kim, whose nervous energy and quick wit made him useful for coming up with creative ways to torment their targets while maintaining plausible deniability. Alex had been successful in avoiding their attention for nearly 3 weeks, but his luck ran out on a Tuesday afternoon in late October. He was walking through the main hallway after his last class, his backpack slung over one shoulder and his phone in his hand as he checked his schedule for the next day. The hallway was crowded with students heading to after-school activities or toward the parking lot, creating the kind of chaos that Alex usually navigated easily. He didn't see the collision coming. One moment he was walking steadily toward the exit, and the next he was sprawling on the polished floor as his phone skittered across the hallway tiles. His backpack had fallen open, spilling notebooks and pens across the walkway as other students stepped around him with mild annoyance. Alex looked up to see Brad Hutchinson standing over him, an expression of exaggerated concern on his face that didn't match the amusement in his eyes. "Oh man, I'm so sorry," Brad said, his voice carrying easily over the hallway noise. "I didn't see you there. You're pretty small, you know that?" He extended a hand as if to help Alex up, but there was something about the gesture that felt more like mockery than genuine assistance. Mason and Ryan had appeared beside him, forming a loose circle around Alex as he gathered his scattered belongings. Alex accepted the help up, brushing dust off his jeans and trying to assess whether anything then damaged in the fall. His phone lay several feet away, face down on the floor, and he moved to retrieve it quickly. As he bent down, Ryan stepped forward with exaggerated helpfulness. "Hey, let me get that for you," Ryan said, scooping up the phone before Alex could reach it. He examined it with theatrical concern, turning it over in his hands as if checking for damage. "Looks like it might be cracked." "That's rough, man. These things are expensive to replace." Alex extended his hand for his phone, but Ryan seemed reluctant to return it immediately. Instead, he continued his examination while Brad and Mason watched with barely concealed grins. "What kind of phone is this anyway?" Ryan asked. "Looks pretty basic. I mean, not the latest model or anything." "It works fine," Alex said quietly, still holding out his hand. "Can I have it back, please?" Of course," Ryan replied. But instead of handing it over directly, he tossed it casually through the air. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Alex caught it reflexively, his relief evident as he quickly checked to make sure it was still functioning properly. The screen was intact, and all his apps appeared to be working normally. "You should really be more careful," Brad said, his tone suggesting friendly advice. "Wouldn't want to damage something important, you know. I mean, that phone probably has all kinds of personal stuff on it. Photos, messages, social media accounts. Losing all that would be terrible." There was something about the way Brad emphasized certain words that made Alex uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite identify why. He mumbled a thank you and started to walk away, eager to put distance between himself and the three students who seemed to find his clumsiness so entertaining. "Hey, wait up," Mason called after him. "What's your name anyway? I don't think we've been properly introduced." Alex paused, torn between his desire to escape and his recognition that ignoring them completely might create more problems than. "It's solved. Alex," he said simply. "Alex," Brad repeated, as if testing how the name sounded. "That's a nice name, simple. I like that in a person. I'm Brad, this is Mason, and that's Ryan. We like to get to know all the new students, make sure they feel welcome at Ridge Valley." "Thanks," Alex replied, adjusting his backpack and taking another step toward the exit. "I should really get going, though. I have a lot of homework." "Homework's important," Ryan agreed with exaggerated seriousness. "Education is the key to success, right? Though I bet someone like you doesn't have too much trouble with the academic side of things. You look like the studious type." Alex wasn't sure if that was meant as a compliment or an insult, but he chose to take it as the former. "I try to do well in my classes," he said diplomatically. "That's good," Brad said. "Really admirable. I respect that in a person. Shows dedication. You know, commitment to excellence." He paused, studying Alex with an intensity that felt uncomfortable. "What's your favorite subject?" "Computer science," Alex answered honestly, immediately regretting the admission when he saw the exchange of glances between the three students. "Computer science," Mason repeated with interest. "So you're good with technology? That's cool. I mean, that's really valuable these days. Everyone needs tech support, right?" "I guess," Alex said, sensing that the conversation was heading in a direction he didn't like. "I should really go, though. My mom's expecting me home." "Of course," Brad said with understanding. "Family's important. We wouldn't want to keep you from your responsibilities." He stepped aside with a theatrical gesture, clearing Alex's path to the exit. "It was really nice meeting you, Alex. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other." As Alex walked away, he could hear their laughter echoing behind him in the hallway. It wasn't necessarily malicious laughter, but there was something about it that left him feeling unsettled. He'd encountered enough bullies in his previous schools to recognize the warning signs, and something about his interaction with Brad's group felt like the opening moves in a game he didn't want to play. The next few days passed without incident, and Alex began to hope that his encounter with Brad had been nothing more than typical new student hazing. He maintained his usual routine of arriving early, keeping to himself during lunch, and staying late in the computer lab to work on personal projects. His classes were going well, with several teachers already recognizing his exceptional abilities in mathematics and computer science. It was during his advanced programming class that Alex first demonstrated just how far beyond his peers his skills had evolved. The teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, had assigned a complex project involving database management and user interface design. Most students were struggling with the basic concepts, but Alex had completed the assignment in less than an hour and was already working on advanced features that weren't even part of the requirements. Mr. Rodriguez approached Alex's workstation with curiosity, examining the elegant code that scrolled across his screen. "This is impressive work, Alex," he said quietly, not wanting to draw attention from the other students who were still wrestling with much simpler problems. "Have you had formal training in database architecture?" "Not really," Alex replied. "Honestly, I mostly just learned by experimenting and reading documentation online. My dad taught me some basics when I was younger, but most of it I figured out on my own." Mr. Rodriguez studied his work more closely, noting the sophisticated security protocols and elegant user interface that Alex had created seemingly without effort. "Would you be interested in helping me with a special project?" he asked. "The school's been looking for someone to help update our student portal system. It's mostly volunteer work, but it would look great on college applications." Alex felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of working on a real system that would be used by hundreds of people. "I'd love to help," he said eagerly. "When would we start?" "How about after school today?" Mr. Rodriguez suggested. "I can show you the current system and explain what we're hoping to accomplish." That afternoon, Alex found himself in Mr. Rodriguez's classroom after the final bell, examining the school's digital infrastructure with the same fascination he might have shown for a particularly interesting puzzle. The student portal system was functional but outdated, with security protocols that made him wince and a user interface that looked like it hadn't been updated in years. "The main problem is that it's built on legacy code," Mr. Rodriguez explained. "Every time we try to add new features, we run into compatibility issues. What we really need is a complete rebuild from the ground up, but the administration is worried about the cost and complexity." Alex studied the system architecture, his mind already racing with possibilities. "I could rebuild this," he said confidently. "It wouldn't take very long, and I could make it much more secure and user-friendly." Mr. Rodriguez looked surprised. "That's a pretty ambitious project, Alex. Are you sure you understand the scope of what would be involved?" "I think so," Alex replied, already sketching out a basic framework in his notebook. "The hardest part would be migrating all the existing data without losing anything important. But the actual coding wouldn't be too difficult." As Alex explained his approach, Mr. Rodriguez realized that he was listening to someone whose understanding of complex systems far exceeded what he'd expected from a high school student. Alex's casual references to advanced security protocols and database optimization techniques suggested a depth of knowledge that was truly remarkable for someone his age. "Let me talk to the administration about this," Mr. Rodriguez said finally. "If they approve the project, would you be willing to take it on?" "It would be a significant time commitment." "Absolutely," Alex said without hesitation. "This is exactly the kind of thing I love working on." As Alex gathered his things to leave, he felt more optimistic about his time at Ridge Valley than he had since arriving. Having a meaningful project to work on would give him something productive to focus on, and Mr. Rodriguez seemed like the type of teacher who would appreciate his abilities without making a big deal about them. Unfortunately, his good mood was short-lived. As he walked through the hallway toward the exit, he encountered Brad, Mason, and Ryan loitering near the main entrance. They appeared to be waiting for someone, and Alex hoped he could slip past them without being noticed. "Alex!" Brad called out with apparent delight. "Perfect timing. We were just talking about you." Alex paused reluctantly, recognizing that ignoring them would likely create more problems than engaging briefly. "Hi," he said simply. "We heard you're some kind of computer genius," Ryan said with interest. "Mr. Rodriguez was telling everyone about your programming skills. That's really impressive." "It's just a hobby," Alex replied, uncomfortable with the attention. "I like working on coding projects." "Just a hobby," Mason repeated with amusement. "That's modest of you. From what we heard, you're way beyond hobby level, more like professional grade stuff." Brad stepped closer, his expression friendly but somehow predatory. "You know, that's exactly the kind of skill that could be really useful. I mean, there are always computer problems that need solving, right? Technical difficulties that require someone with real expertise." Alex sensed where the conversation was heading and didn't like it. "I'm not really available for tech support," he said carefully. "I'm pretty busy with schoolwork and other projects." "Oh, we wouldn't want to interfere with your education," Brad said with mock concern. "That would be irresponsible of us. But you know, sometimes opportunities come up where someone with your abilities could really help out their fellow students. Community service, you might say." "What kind of opportunities?" Alex asked, though he was already pretty sure he didn't want to know the answer. Brad exchanged glances with his companions before responding. "Well, for example, sometimes students forget their passwords for various accounts. Social media, email, that sort of thing. Someone with your skills could probably help them recover access to their own accounts, right? That would be helping, not hurting anyone." Alex felt his stomach tighten as he recognized the implications of what Brad was suggesting. "That's not really how password recovery works," he said slowly. "And even if it was, I wouldn't feel comfortable accessing other people's accounts." "Oh, I'm not talking about accessing anything," Brad said quickly. "Just helping people get back into their own stuff. You know, being a good neighbor." "I really should get going," Alex said, taking a step toward the exit. "My parents are expecting me." "Of course," Brad replied smoothly. "Family obligations are important. But Alex, I want you to think about what I said. About being helpful to your fellow students. About being part of the community here at Ridge Valley." There was something in Brad's tone that sounded more like a threat than a request, and Alex quickened his pace as he headed toward the parking lot where his mother would be waiting to pick him up. Behind him, he could hear the three students talking quietly among themselves, their voices too low for him to make out specific words, but the tone somehow ominous. During the car ride home, Alex's mother noticed his subdued mood. "How was school today?" she asked with the casual interest that parents always showed, but that teenagers rarely appreciated. "It was fine," Alex replied automatically, staring out the window at the suburban landscape passing by. "I got assigned to help with a computer project for one of my teachers." "That sounds exciting," Dr. Chen said with genuine enthusiasm. "What kind of project?" Alex explained about the student portal system and Mr. Rodriguez's request for help, finding that talking about the technical challenges helped distract him from his worries about Brad and his friends. His mother listened, with the kind of engaged attention that made Alex remember why he enjoyed discussing his interests with his parents. "I'm proud of you for volunteering to help," she said as they pulled into their driveway. "It sounds like a great opportunity to apply your skills in a meaningful way." That evening at dinner, Alex shared the details of his new project with his father, who asked thoughtful questions about the technical challenges involved. David Chen had enough experience with enterprise-level systems to understand the complexity of what his son was proposing, and he was both impressed and slightly concerned about the scope of the undertaking. "Just remember to pace yourself," his father advised. "These kinds of projects can expand beyond their original scope pretty quickly if you're not careful. And make sure you have proper backup procedures in place before you start migrating any data." "I will," Alex assured him. Mr. Rodriguez said he'd help me coordinate with the IT department to make sure everything's done properly. As the family finished dinner, Alex felt grateful for his parents' support and understanding. They never made him feel like his interests were strange or antisocial, and they trusted him to make good decisions about how he used his abilities. It was a level of acceptance and encouragement that he knew not all teenagers enjoyed, and it made him more determined than ever to use his skills responsibly. The next morning, Alex arrived at school early as usual, eager to spend some time in the computer lab before classes began. He'd been thinking about the student portal project all evening, and he had several ideas for improvements that he wanted to test out before his meeting with Mr. Rodriguez later that day. The computer lab was empty when he arrived, which was exactly how he preferred it. Alex settled at his usual workstation and began sketching out a basic framework for the new portal system. He became so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice other students beginning to arrive until the warning bell rang, signaling that first period would begin in 10 minutes. As Alex gathered his materials, he noticed Brad, Mason, and Ryan entering the lab. They appeared to be looking for someone, and Alex felt his heart sink as their eyes settled on him. He quickly finished packing his backpack, hoping to exit before they could corner him, but Ryan had positioned himself near the door. "Alex," Brad called out cheerfully. "Just the person we were looking for. Do you have a minute?" "I need to get to class," Alex replied, checking his watch with exaggerated concern. "First period starts soon." "This won't take long," Mason assured him. "We just had a quick question about something." Alex reluctantly approached their small group, keeping his backpack slung over his shoulder in preparation for a quick exit. "What's the question?" Brad pulled out his phone and showed Alex the screen, which displayed a login page for a popular social media platform. "I'm having trouble getting into my account," he said with apparent frustration. "I think I forgot my password, and the recovery process isn't working properly. You mentioned yesterday that you're good with this kind of stuff." Alex studied the screen carefully, noting that it appeared to be a legitimate login page for the platform in question. "Have you tried the standard password recovery options?" he asked. "Usually there's an email or text message option." "Yeah, I tried all that," Brad said dismissively. "But it's not working for some reason. I was hoping maybe you could take a look at it, see if there's something I'm missing." Alex felt uncomfortable with the request, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly why. "I'm not really qualified to help with account recovery issues," he said carefully. "That's something the platform support team would need to handle." "Come on," Ryan said with friendly persistence. "You're obviously way better with this stuff than their support team. It would probably take you 5 minutes to figure out what's wrong." "I really don't think I should," Alex began, but Brad interrupted him with an expression of disappointed understanding. "I get it," Brad said with a sigh. "You don't want to get involved. That's probably smart, actually. I mean, who knows what kind of liability issues there might be, right?" Alex felt a small surge of relief that Brad seemed to be accepting his refusal. "Exactly," he agreed. "It's better to go through official channels for stuff like this." "Absolutely," Brad said with apparent sincerity. "You're totally right. I'll contact their support team and work through the proper procedures." As Alex headed toward the door, he felt pleased with how he'd handled the situation. He'd been firm but polite in his refusal, and Brad had seemed to accept it without argument. Maybe his initial concerns about the 3 students had been overblown. The morning passed uneventfully, with Alex attending his regular classes and participating in discussions with his usual quiet competence. During lunch, he headed to the computer lab to continue working on ideas for the portal project, finding the familiar environment of keyboards and monitors soothing after the social complexity of classroom interactions. He'd been working for about 20 minutes when Mr. Rodriguez appeared at his workstation, looking pleased and slightly excited. "Alex, I have good news," he said. "I spoke with the administration about your proposal for the portal system, and they're very interested in moving forward." Alex felt a surge of excitement. "Really? They approved the project?" "They did," Mr. Rodriguez confirmed. "In fact, They're so impressed with your qualifications that they want to fast-track the implementation. The IT director wants to meet with you this afternoon to discuss the technical requirements." "That's amazing," Alex said, his mind already racing with possibilities. "When would we start the actual development work?" "Probably next week," Mr. Rodriguez replied. "But first we need to make sure you have proper access to the systems you'll be working with. The IT director will set up credentials for you and explain the security protocols you'll need to follow." As Mr. Rodriguez walked away, Alex felt more motivated and focused than he had since arriving at Ridge Valley High. Having a meaningful project to work on would give him something positive to concentrate on, and the recognition of his abilities by the school administration felt like validation of all the hours he'd spent learning and experimenting with complex systems. The rest of the lunch period passed quickly as Alex sketched out increasingly detailed plans for the new portal system. He was so absorbed in his work that he barely noticed when other students began entering the lab for afternoon computer classes. It wasn't until someone cleared their throat behind him that he realized he was no longer alone. Alex turned to find Brad standing behind his chair, studying his computer screen with apparent interest. Mason and Ryan flanked him on either side, creating a formation that felt vaguely threatening despite their casual postures. "Wow," Brad said with what sounded like genuine admiration. "That looks really complex. Is this for a class project?" "Something like that," Alex replied carefully, minimizing his work and turning to face them. "Did you need something?" "Actually, yeah," Brad said, settling into the chair at the adjacent workstation. "Remember this morning when we were talking about my account problem? Well, it turns out the situation is a little more complicated than I thought." Alex felt his stomach tighten with anticipation of whatever was coming next. "Complicated how?" Brad glanced around the lab to make sure they weren't being overheard before leaning closer. "So it turns out the account isn't actually mine," he said quietly. "It belongs to someone else. Someone who's been saying some pretty nasty things about people at this school." "I don't understand," Alex said, though he was beginning to suspect he understood perfectly. "There's this student who's been using fake accounts to spread rumors and post embarrassing stuff about other people," Mason explained. "Really hurtful stuff that's been making people's lives miserable." "We know who's doing it," Ryan added. "But we can't prove it because they're hiding behind these anonymous accounts. If someone could get access to the accounts, we could gather evidence and report them to the administration." Alex studied their faces, looking for signs of deception, but finding only apparent sincerity and concern. "Why don't you just report your suspicions to the administration directly?" he asked. "They have ways of investigating this kind of thing." "We tried that," Brad said with frustration. "But without proof, there's nothing they can do. The person doing this is smart about covering their tracks. They delete everything after they post it, use VPNs to hide their IP address, that sort of thing. Which is why we need someone with real technical skills to help us gather evidence," Mason said, looking directly at Alex. "Someone who understands how these systems work and can trace things back to their source." Alex felt the familiar sensation of being maneuvered into a position he didn't want to be in. "What you're describing sounds like unauthorized access to private accounts," he said carefully. "That's illegal, regardless of the reason for doing it." "Is it really illegal if we're trying to protect other students from harassment?" Ryan asked with apparent innocence. "I mean, wouldn't that be more like digital self-defense?" "The law doesn't really make that distinction," Alex replied firmly. "Accessing someone else's accounts without permission is a crime, even if you think you have good reasons for doing it." Brad's expression shifted subtly, the friendly concern replaced by something cooler and more calculating. "That's an interesting perspective, Alex. Very principled of you. I respect that." Something about his tone made Alex uncomfortable, and he began gathering his materials in preparation for leaving. "I should get to my next class," he said. "Of course," Brad said smoothly. We wouldn't want to make you late. But Alex, I want you to think about what we discussed. About the importance of protecting fellow students from harassment. About being a good member of the Ridge Valley community. As Alex walked away, he could feel their eyes following him. Across the lab, the conversation had left him feeling unsettled and vaguely threatened, though he couldn't point to anything specific that Brad had said or done that crossed the line into actual intimidation. The meeting with the IT director. That afternoon went exceptionally well, with Alex demonstrating a level of technical understanding that impressed even the experienced network administrator. They discussed security protocols, backup procedures, and implementation timelines, with Alex asking sophisticated questions that showed he understood the complexities involved in managing a system used by hundreds of people. I have to say, Alex, I'm impressed, the IT director said as their meeting concluded. It's rare to find someone your age with this level of expertise. Where did you learn all this? Mostly self-taught, Alex replied honestly. I've been interested in computers since I was little, and I just kept learning more advanced stuff as I got older. Well, your self-teaching has been very effective, the director said with a smile. I think this project is going to be a great success. As Alex walked home that afternoon, he felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose that had been missing since his arrival at Ridge Valley High. The portal project would give him something meaningful to work on, and the recognition of his abilities by both Mr. Rodriguez and the IT director felt like validation of his interests and skills. Unfortunately, his good mood was short-lived. As he approached his usual pickup spot in the parking lot, he noticed Brad, Mason, and Ryan gathered near his mother's car. They appeared to be having a casual conversation, but something about their positioning suggested they were waiting for him specifically. Alex slowed his pace, hoping they might leave before he reached the car, but Brad spotted him and waved with apparent friendliness. Alex, perfect timing. We were just talking to your mom about what an interesting guy you are. Alex's heart sank as he realized they had engaged his mother in conversation. Dr. Chen was standing beside her car with a polite but slightly confused expression, clearly unsure why 3 students she'd never met were so interested in discussing her son. Mom, we should go, Alex said quickly as he approached. I have a lot of homework tonight. Of course, sweetie, she replied, but Brad stepped forward with a charming smile. Mrs. Chen, I just wanted to tell you what a pleasure it's been getting to know Alex, he said with practiced sincerity. He's obviously very talented with computers, and we've been hoping to include him in some of our group projects. That's very nice of you, Dr. Chen replied, looking pleased that her son was making friends at his new school. Alex has always been gifted with technology. We've definitely noticed that, Mason added with enthusiasm. In fact, we were just discussing how someone with his skills could really make a difference in the school community. Alex felt increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation continued, particularly when he noticed the subtle looks that passed between Brad and his companions. There was something calculated about their interaction with his mother, as if they were gathering information or establishing some kind of relationship that Alex didn't understand. We should really get going, Alex said more firmly, opening the passenger door of his mother's car. Of course, Brad said with understanding. It was really nice meeting you, Mrs. Chen. I hope we'll see more of Alex in our group activities. As they drove away, Alex's mother commented on how polite and well-spoken his new friend seemed. They obviously think very highly of you, she said with maternal pride. It's nice to see you connecting with other students. Alex didn't have the heart to tell her that Brad and his friends weren't actually his friends, and that their interest in him felt more predatory than friendly. Instead, he nodded noncommittally and stared out the window, wondering what they had really wanted to accomplish by talking to his mother. That evening, Alex tried to focus on his regular homework and planning for the portal project, but he found it difficult to concentrate. Something about his interactions with Brad's group felt increasingly ominous. though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was setting off his internal alarm bells. They hadn't actually threatened him or demanded anything specific, but there was an undercurrent of manipulation in their behavior that made him deeply uncomfortable. As he prepared for bed that night, Alex made a mental note to be more careful about avoiding Brad, Mason, and Ryan in the future. Whatever they wanted from him, he was certain it wasn't anything he should be involved in. His instincts were telling him that getting entangled with them would lead to trouble, and he'd learned to trust those instincts over the years. Unfortunately, avoiding them would prove to be much more difficult than he anticipated. The theft happened on a Friday afternoon when Alex least expected it. He'd just finished presenting his preliminary portal system design to the administration, receiving enthusiastic approval and a timeline to begin implementation the following week. Walking toward the exit with his laptop bag and phone in hand, Alex felt genuinely optimistic about his future at Ridge Valley High for the first time since arriving. The ambush was perfectly orchestrated. As Alex passed the alcove near the gymnasium, Ryan stepped out and bumped into him with calculated clumsiness. Alex's phone flew from his hand, landing on the polished floor with a sharp crack. Before he could react, Mason had scooped it up while Brad appeared from behind a pillar, blocking Alex's path to retrieve it. "Whoa, sorry about that," Ryan said with mock concern. "Didn't see you there. Your phone okay?" "Give it back," Alex said firmly, extending his hand toward Mason, who was examining the device with theatrical interest. "Relax, we're just checking for damage," Brad said smoothly. "Wouldn't want you walking around with a broken phone. That could be dangerous." Mason powered on the device, and Alex's stomach dropped as he realized his phone wasn't locked. He'd been in the middle of checking his schedule when the collision occurred, leaving all his accounts and data completely accessible. "Interesting," Mason said, scrolling through Alex's home screen. "You've got a lot of apps here. Social media, email, cloud storage. Pretty much your whole digital life, right?" "That's my personal property," Alex said, his voice gaining an edge of real anger. "You need to return it immediately." "Oh, we will," Brad assured him. "But first, we're curious about something. See, we've been hearing rumors about your computer skills, and we wanted to see what kind of security practices you follow. Professional interest, you might say." Ryan had positioned himself behind Alex while they talked, effectively boxing him in. The hallway was mostly empty, with only a few distant students who seemed deliberately oblivious to what was happening. "Your Instagram account," Mason continued, having navigated to Alex's social media. "Lot of followers for someone who just moved here. Must be from your old schools, right?" Alex watched in horror as Mason began scrolling through his posts, his photos, his messages. Everything he'd built digitally over the years was being violated in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Discord too," Ryan observed, looking over Mason's shoulder. "Multiple servers, gaming communities, programming forums. You're pretty active online for such a quiet guy in person." "Please just give me my phone back," Alex said, hating how desperate he sounded but unable to hide his growing panic. "Here's the thing, Alex," Brad said, stepping closer until he was uncomfortably close. "We've been very patient with you. We've asked nicely for your help with some simple technical issues, and you've been completely uncooperative. That's disappointing behavior from someone who's supposed to be part of our school community." Mason had found Alex's photo gallery and was scrolling through personal pictures with obvious amusement. "Some interesting shots here," he said loud enough for the few remaining students in the hallway to hear. "Family vacation pics, some pretty embarrassing childhood photos. This one of you in the dorky science camp t-shirt is particularly good." Alex felt heat rising in his face as he realized they were planning to use his own photos against him. "Those are private," he said. "Not anymore," Ryan said cheerfully. "Privacy's kind of an outdated concept anyway, don't you think? I mean, once something's digital, it's basically public domain." Brad pulled out his own phone and began filming Alex's increasingly desperate attempts to retrieve his device. "This is good content," he said with satisfaction. Alex Chen, Ridge Valley's supposed computer genius, completely helpless when someone else has control of his technology. The humiliation was unbearable, but worse was the growing realization of what they could do with unrestricted access to all his accounts. Alex's phone contained his entire digital identity, access to cloud storage with years of personal files, social media accounts connected to friends from multiple schools, even saved passwords for dozens of other services. "You know what?" Brad said suddenly, as if struck by inspiration. "I think Alex needs to learn what it feels like when technology isn't on his side, when someone else has the power." Mason grinned with understanding. "Social media cleanse?" "Exactly," Brad confirmed. "Sometimes people accumulate too much digital clutter. Posts they don't really need, followers they don't actually care about, accounts they've outgrown. We're going to help Alex simplify his online presence." Alex lunged forward, trying desperately to grab his phone, but Ryan caught his arm and twisted it behind his back with surprising strength. "Easy there, computer boy," he said with amusement. "We're trying to help you." Mason began systematically deleting Alex's Instagram posts, starting with the most recent and working backward through months of memories. Photos from his old schools, pictures with friends he'd left behind, documentation of programming projects he'd been proud of. Each deletion felt like a piece of his identity being erased. "This is actually pretty therapeutic," Mason said as he continued his systematic destruction. "Like digital spring cleaning. You should thank us for this service." Brad was still filming, capturing Alex's desperate attempts to break free and Mason's methodical destruction of his social media presence. "This is going to make great content for our own accounts," he said with satisfaction. The day Alex Chen learned that he's not as smart as he thinks he is, the deletion process continued across multiple platforms. Snapchat streaks that Alex had maintained for months were broken. Discord servers where he'd built relationships with other programmers were abandoned without explanation. Email accounts were accessed and personal messages were read aloud for Brad's amusement. "Oh, this is interesting," Ryan said, having taken the phone from Mason to explore Alex's cloud storage. "Looks like our computer genius keeps copies of all his code projects here, some pretty advanced stuff too." Alex watched in growing horror as Ryan began deleting files that represented hundreds of hours of work. Programming projects he'd been proud of, algorithms he'd developed through painstaking trial and error, documentation for systems he'd spent weeks perfecting. Years of digital creation were being destroyed in minutes. "Stop," Alex said, his voice breaking with genuine anguish. "Please just stop." "We're almost done," Brad assured him with mock sympathy. "Just need to make sure we've completed the cleansing process thoroughly. Can't leave any digital clutter behind." Mason had moved on to Alex's photo gallery, selecting the most embarrassing pictures and uploading them to various social media platforms with mocking captions. The dorky science camp photo became his new profile picture across multiple accounts. An awkward family dinner photo was posted with commentary about his exciting social life. But the worst violation came when Ryan discovered Alex's private coding journal, a digital notebook where he documented his learning process, recorded interesting discoveries, and worked through complex problems. It was intensely personal, filled with his thoughts and struggles and moments of breakthrough understanding. "Listen to this," Ryan said, beginning to read entries aloud in a mocking voice. "Today I finally figured out the recursive algorithm for the binary tree traversal. It's amazing how elegant the solution becomes once you understand the underlying pattern." He looked up with exaggerated amazement. "Wow, Alex, you really know how to live life to the fullest." The readings continued, each entry becoming more painful as his private thoughts were turned into public mockery. Mathematical insights he'd been excited about, programming challenges he'd struggled with, Even personal reflections on his difficulties making friends at new schools. Nothing was too private or personal to escape their ridicule. "This one's my favorite," Mason said, taking over the reading. "I sometimes wonder if I'll ever find people who understand my interests the way my computers do. At least code is logical and predictable, unlike human social dynamics." He paused for effect. "That explains so much about you, Alex." The systematic destruction continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. By the time they were finished, Alex's digital identity had been completely ransacked. His social media accounts were either deleted or filled with embarrassing content. His cloud storage was wiped clean. His communication with friends from other schools was severed, and his private thoughts had been broadcast for their entertainment. "There," Brad said with satisfaction, finally handing the phone back to Alex. "All cleaned up. You should feel much lighter now, digitally speaking." Alex took his phone with trembling hands, immediately beginning to assess the damage. Everything was worse than he'd feared. Years of digital life had been systematically destroyed, and the recovery process would take weeks or months if it was even possible at all. "Consider this a learning experience," Ryan said cheerfully. "Sometimes you need to lose everything to appreciate what you had." "And Alex," Brad added, his voice taking on a harder edge, "I hope this helps you understand how things work at Ridge Valley High. When students ask for your help, you help them. When they make reasonable requests, you accommodate them. Because the alternative is much worse than losing a few photos and posts." As the three of them walked away, laughing and congratulating each other on their creative problem-solving, Alex stood alone in the empty hallway with his violated phone and the ruins of his digital identity. The humiliation was overwhelming, but underneath it was something else entirely. Something cold and calculating and absolutely furious. For the first time since arriving at Ridge Valley High, Alex wasn't thinking about avoiding conflict or maintaining his low profile. He was thinking about the fact that Brad, Mason, and Ryan had just declared war on someone who lived and breathed in the digital realm where he was absolutely unstoppable. They had made the critical mistake of assuming that destroying his social media presence would leave him powerless. What they didn't understand was that social media was just the surface layer of Alex's digital existence. Underneath were skills and capabilities that could turn their own technological lives into absolute nightmares. Alex spent the weekend in his room, ostensibly recovering his deleted files and rebuilding his online presence. His parents, who had noticed his subdued mood, assumed he was dealing with typical teenage social drama and gave him space to work through whatever was bothering him. They had no idea that their son was actually planning the most sophisticated act of digital revenge in Ridge Valley High's history. The beauty of Alex's plan was its elegance. Rather than launching a crude attack that could be traced back to him, he would use Brad's group's own digital carelessness against them. Every teenager left digital footprints everywhere, and Alex had the skills to follow those footprints wherever they led. He started with basic reconnaissance, using publicly available information to map out their online presence. Brad's Instagram account was a treasure trove of personal information, with location tags that revealed his daily routines, photos that showed his family's expensive lifestyle, and enough personal details to answer any security questions. Mason's gaming accounts used the same username across multiple platforms, making it easy to track his activities and preferences. Ryan's Twitter account was linked to his email address, which he'd used to register for dozens of other services. But Alex didn't stop at surface-level investigation. Using techniques he'd learned from security research forums, he began probing deeper into their digital lives. He discovered that all three of them used laughably weak passwords, often variations of their own names combined with significant dates. Their security practices were non-existent, with the same credentials used across multiple important accounts. The real breakthrough came when Alex discovered that Brad's laptop was connected to the school's Wi-Fi network with saved credentials. A simple network scan revealed that the device had multiple security vulnerabilities, including outdated software with known exploits. Getting access to Brad's computer would be trivial for someone with Alex's skills. Sunday evening, Alex put his plan into motion. Using the school's Wi-Fi logs, he identified when Brad's laptop would be active on the network. A carefully crafted payload, delivered through a seemingly innocent email that appeared to be from the school's IT department, gave Alex complete remote access to Brad's computer. What he found there exceeded his wildest expectations. Brad had saved passwords for everything, stored in an unencrypted text file on his desktop. His browser history revealed visits to questionable websites that would be embarrassing if made public. His photo gallery contained pictures that were meant to be private, including several that showed him in compromising situations at parties. But the real goldmine was Brad's social media accounts, which he'd left logged in on his computer. Alex now had complete control over Brad's entire online presence, along with access to private messages that revealed the true nature of his character. Conversations where he mocked other students, planned elaborate harassment campaigns, and bragged about his ability to manipulate teachers and administrators. Mason and Ryan's devices fell just as easily. Mason's gaming computer was riddled with malware from questionable download sites, making it simple for Alex to install his own monitoring software. Ryan's phone was backed up to a cloud service with credentials he'd written down in a notes app, giving Alex access to everything from text messages to voice recordings. By Monday morning, Alex had complete control over their digital lives. Every account, every device, every piece of personal information they'd ever stored electronically was now at his fingertips. The question wasn't whether he could destroy them digitally, but how thoroughly he wanted to do it. Alex arrived at school early, as was his habit, but this time he carried himself differently. Gone was the apologetic posture and nervous energy that had marked his first weeks at Ridge Valley. In its place was the quiet confidence of someone who held all the cards and was simply waiting for the right moment to play them. He spent his morning classes in a state of calm anticipation, occasionally checking his phone to monitor the digital traps he'd set for his tormentors. Everything was in place. All that remained was to trigger the sequence of events that would systematically dismantle their social standing and digital privacy. The opportunity came during lunch period. Alex was in the computer lab, ostensibly working on his portal project, but actually making final preparations for his revenge. When Brad, Mason, and Ryan entered with their usual swagger, they approached his workstation with the casual arrogance of people who believed they'd already won their game of intimidation. "Hey, Alex," Brad said with false friendliness. "How was your weekend? Get your phone situation sorted out." Alex looked up from his screen with an expression of mild curiosity. "It's been an interesting few days," he said simply. "Very educational." "That's good to hear," Mason said with amusement. "We were worried we might have been a little too helpful with your digital spring cleaning." "Oh, you were extremely helpful," Alex assured them. "In fact, you inspired me to take a much more active approach to digital security and privacy. I've learned so much about how vulnerable people can be when they don't take proper precautions." Something in Alex's tone made Ryan shift uncomfortably. "What kind of precautions?" Alex smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since they'd met. "Well, for example, did you know that most people use the same password across multiple accounts? And that they often save those passwords in easily accessible places. It's really quite fascinating from a security research perspective." Brad's expression began to change as he processed the implications of what Alex was saying. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about digital literacy, Brad. About understanding how technology actually works instead of just using it carelessly." Alex's fingers moved across his keyboard with practiced efficiency. "For instance, Would you be interested to know that your laptop has been broadcasting your stored credentials to anyone who cares to listen? The color began draining from Brad's face as he realized what Alex was implying. You can't do that. That's illegal. Is it? Alex asked with apparent curiosity. I thought you said privacy was an outdated concept. That once something's digital, it's basically public domain. Mason grabbed Brad's arm with growing panic. He's bluffing. There's no way he could actually access our stuff. Alex turned his laptop screen so they could see it clearly. Displayed on the monitor was Brad's Instagram account, but not as he'd left it. Every photo had been replaced with embarrassing screenshots from his browser history. His profile picture was now the most unflattering photo from his camera roll. His bio had been changed to a detailed confession of his bullying activities. This is impossible, Ryan whispered, staring at the screen in horror. Actually, it's quite simple when you understand the underlying systems, Alex explained calmly. Your security practices are what's truly impossible to believe. I mean, Brad123 as a password? Really? Brad lunged toward the laptop, but Alex calmly closed it before he could reach it. I wouldn't try to stop what's already in motion. He advised, the automated scripts are already running. Your Snapchat should be posting some interesting content right about now. Mason pulled out his phone with trembling hands, and his face went white as he saw his own social media accounts beginning to post embarrassing content. Gaming screenshots showing him losing badly, private messages where he'd talked trash about. Other students, photos he'd taken of himself that were never meant to be shared publicly. Make it stop, Mason pleaded. Whatever you're doing, just make it stop. Oh, I can't stop it now, Alex said with mock regret. The beauty of automated systems is that they run independently once they're launched. Just like you couldn't stop deleting my files once you'd started, I can't really control what happens to your accounts now that the process has begun. Ryan's phone buzzed with notification after notification as his Twitter account began posting. His private DMs revealing the cruel things he'd said about other students behind their backs. His Instagram started sharing photos from his camera roll that showed him cheating on tests, drinking at parties, and engaging in other activities that would get him in serious trouble with both the school and his parents. This is worse than what we did to you, Brad said desperately. We just deleted some photos. You're destroying our entire lives. Alex considered this observation thoughtfully. You're right, this is much worse. But then again, you destroyed years of my work and violated my privacy in ways I'm still discovering. And you did it for entertainment, to make yourselves feel powerful. I'm doing this to teach you a lesson about consequences. The notifications were coming faster now, as the automated systems Alex had created worked through their comprehensive revenge protocols. Every embarrassing photo, every cruel message, every private moment they'd never intended to share was being systematically posted across their social media accounts. But Alex wasn't finished. Phase 2 of his plan involved their academic records, which he'd accessed through the school's poorly secured student portal. Grade changes that would trigger academic probation, disciplinary reports that had been mysteriously filed, attendance records that showed suspicious patterns of absence during important tests. The administration should be getting some interesting automated reports about your academic integrity right about now, Alex mentioned casually. Apparently, the system has flagged some concerning patterns in your testing scores and attendance records. Brad's phone rang with a call from his father, whose business contacts were probably seeing the embarrassing content flooding Brad's social media accounts. Mason's mother was texting frantically about posts she'd seen on his Instagram. Ryan's college recruiting coach was calling to ask about some troubling information that had come to his attention. Please, Brad said, his voice breaking with genuine desperation. We're sorry. We didn't know you could do this. Just please make it stop. Alex studied their terrified faces with the same analytical approach he applied to complex coding problems. The thing is, Brad, I tried to avoid this situation. I was perfectly happy being invisible, working on my projects, not bothering anyone. You forced this confrontation by refusing to leave me alone. We'll leave you alone now, Mason promised. Frantically. We'll never bother you again. We'll tell everyone to stay away from you. Oh, I know you'll leave me alone, Alex said with certainty. Because now everyone at this school is going to see exactly who you really are. The cruel messages you send about other students, the way you plan your harassment campaigns, the photos you take of people without their permission to mock them later. The computer lab had begun filling with other students, drawn by the commotion and the increasingly frantic behavior of Brad's group. Several people had their phones out, recording the confrontation and probably sharing it in real time across the school's social networks. In fact, Alex continued, I think your bullying days at Ridge Valley High are probably over permanently. It's hard to intimidate people when everyone has seen your browser history and read your private messages about them. Ryan was crying now, staring at his phone as years of carefully constructed social media presence were systematically destroyed and replaced with humiliating truth. My parents are going to kill me. My college applications are ruined. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to destroy other people's digital lives for fun, Alex suggested. Actions have consequences, Ryan. I'm just making sure those consequences are appropriately proportional to your actions. The final phase of Alex's revenge was perhaps the most elegant. He'd programmed a virus that would slowly corrupt their devices over the following weeks, causing random malfunctions, deleting important files, and generally making their technology unreliable. Nothing that would cause permanent damage, but enough to remind them daily of what happened when they underestimated the quiet kid with the computer skills. The best part about all this, Alex said as he gathered his materials to leave, is that you did most of the work yourselves. Your terrible security practices, your saved passwords, your unencrypted files. I just had to follow the digital breadcrumbs you left everywhere. As Alex walked toward the exit, he turned back to address the three students who were staring at their phones in horror as their digital lives continued to implode in real time. Oh, and boys, next time you want to steal someone's phone and delete their digital life, make sure they don't know how to turn your own technology against you. Because in the digital world, I'm not the helpless victim you thought I was. I'm the one with the power. The computer lab erupted in whispers and laughter as other students realized what had happened. Brad, Mason, and Ryan sat in stunned silence, watching their social status and digital privacy disappear as quickly and thoroughly as they destroyed Alex's online presence just days before. Alex walked through the hallways of Ridge Valley High with his head held high, no longer the invisible new kid trying to avoid attention. Word of what he'd done was already spreading, carried by social media and excited gossip. By the end of the day, everyone would know that Alex Chen was not someone to be messed with. But more importantly, Alex had learned something valuable about himself. He didn't have to accept being a victim. Sometimes the best way to deal with bullies was to show them that they'd picked the wrong target, and that their actions would have consequences they never saw coming. The digital revolution at Ridge Valley High had begun, and Alex Chen was its undisputed king. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.